أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا إنا مكنا له في الأرض وآتيناه من كل شيء سببا فأتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا قال أما من ظلم فسوف نعذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه فيعذبه عذابا نكرا وأما من آمن وعمل صالحا فله جزاء الحسنى وسنقول له من أمرنا يسرا ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا صدق الله العظيم. So yesterday we finished the 6th section of Surah Kahf. Today we begin the 7th section. And like the first half of Surah Kahf, where there was a khutbah or a lecture section, then a story, then a lecture, then a story, this section goes like there was a lecture first, there was a story that was of Hazrat Musa and Hazrat Khidr alayhimus salam, and now there's another story, right? And then at the end there will be the final lecture, and that will be the final section. So we begin the 7th section today. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, and they ask you, O Muhammad, with regards to Dhul Qarnayn. As we heard at the beginning of the surah, that one of the reasons for the revelation of this surah was that some of the kuffar of Makkah, by the direction of some of the Jews of Medina, had asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 3 questions. One was with regards to the soul, one was regards to the people of the cave, and the third was with regards to Dhul Qarnayn. So Allah says here, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ, that they ask you, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with connection to or with regards to Dhul Qarnayn. So, قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا, say to them that I will read upon you minhu, some of his mentioning. Meaning that whatever I'm going to tell you won't be his complete story, but I will let you know something about him. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to let these people know that I will let you know about some aspects of his life. Now, I don't usually go into details of who was Dhul Qarnayn or people and events and times, but this is one particular one where I think it's a bit, I won't say it's necessary, but it'll be a bit more helpful if we understand who he is, because it will help us relate to the story a little better. Okay? Now, with regards to Dhul Qarnayn, we will find very different and contradicting and all different types of narrations as to who he was. Okay? And the main reason for that is that in the earlier times, the Muslim scholars didn't have access to global historical opinions as they would do later on, right? So as the Islamic empire grew and there was more access to global historical opinions, people's opinions also evolved with regards to historical events, right? So Dhul Qarnayn, he's a historical figure, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning him here. So Mufassirin, with whatever limited resources they had at whatever times they lived in, according to their resources, they had opinions on who he was, right? So some have gone with some opinions which we can say today are completely wrong. Like some have said that Zulqarnain was Alexander the Great, right? But this is impossible because here in the surah, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention him is like he's a believer, right? And Alexander the Great was never a believer. He was a polytheist. So it could not be him at all. But because in that era, kings that conquered from the east to the west were very few, and Alexander the Great was probably one amongst them, some came to that conclusion or to that opinion that's probably him. But that one's completely wrong. Then there was some that say he was a king from the kings of Haimar, which is a civilization in Yemen. And because most of their kings' names begin with the word Dhu, like Dhun Nawaz, right, and so forth, they said Dhul Qarnayn was probably from amongst them. And there's a poem by one of the later people of Haimar generations, where he says, my father Dhul Qarnayn or my grandfather Dhul Qarnayn was a Muslim and so forth. So some people thought he was related to that, or you can say that civilization. But most of the modern scholars now, I would say of the 20th century, 21st century, of the opinion that he is the Iranian emperor who's known as Cyrus in Greek tradition, right? He's called Horus by the Jews, right? And the Arabs call him Kai Khosrow, right? So he has all different names in different traditions. So we'll just relate to him as Cyrus, because that's the closest English name we have here. So Cyrus was an Iranian emperor. Recently, I think in 1971, the Iranian government also had held a whole celebration in his honor. It was the 2500th anniversary of the establishment of his empire. It's all on Google there. Anyone can check it if they would like. But this Emperor Cyrus, he lived in a time where the Persian Empire was split into two, right? One side of it was called Persia, the other side was called Media, right? And he was able to conquer the Median side, and one was in the north and one was in the south, and he was able to combine both empires and to form one united Persian Empire. And after that, he was able to conquer more and more lands to the east and the west, till he conquered what we can say was the world back then. So this was Cyrus, right? So from one of his conquests was that of Babylon, right? At the time. Now, we have to look into another set of history before we get into his conquest of Babylon. Babylon had a ruler, a king, before Cyrus, right? And he's known as Bukhtinasar, right? And this Bukhtinasar, he was an oppressive king. So he also conquered many lands. And it happened he conquered Jerusalem, which was inhabited by the Jews of the time. When he conquered Jerusalem, he executed nearly like 40,000 Jews according to one narration. According to some narrations, he executed nearly up to 70,000 Jews. Then he captured another 100,000 Jews, and he drove them like cattle all the way back to Babylon. So he took all of them out, exiled, and he basically destroyed Masjid al-Aqsa and everything over there. He flattened the place. So he left it completely, what you can say, destroyed. He annihilated everything that was there. So those Jews were in captivity under his rulership, Bukht Nasr. So when Cyrus started his campaign of conquest, he defeated Bukht Nasr. So when he defeated Bukht Nasr, he allowed the Jews to go and re-inhabit Jerusalem again, right? So he sent them all back, and he gave them whatever treasures Bukht Nasr had looted from there, so they can re-civilize the place again. So because of this, Dhul Qarnayn has a special place in Jewish history. So now we can understand why the Jews of Medina had directed the Kuffar of Makkah to ask Rasulullah ﷺ with regards to Dhul Qarnayn, right? Because in their history, he has a special place, right? He's known as the, what do you call it, no? The Redeemer of Israel, right? He basically was able to re-establish Israel for the Jews. And he was a pious king. So the Jews obviously held him in high esteem, and because he has a certain position in their history, they gave the Kuffar of Makkah this question to ask to Rasulullah ﷺ, that who is Dhul Qarnayn? And what about him? You know, what is something about his travels and so forth. So that's a brief history of who he is, according to majority of the scholars of today, because it connects to the reason of revelation of this surah. That's why most scholars are of the opinion that he is the great Iranian emperor Cyrus. So, but as I said, these are all historical, what you can say, opinions. So we can't say with certainty, but because certain historical facts and opinions and traditions point in that direction, that's why some say he may be the emperor of Iran. So Rasulullah ﷺ said that I will soon read upon you something of his mentioning. Meaning whatever I'm going to mention here is not the complete story of his, but there's some, what you can say, incidents of his life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna makkanna lahu fil ard wa ataynahu min kulli shay'in sababa. That we establish him in the land, and we gave him means of all things. Meaning Dhul Qarnayn was a king who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed with plenty of means. Meaning he had a large military, he had the financial means, he had the manpower, he had every means necessary to carry out many conquests, okay, and to be successful in conquests. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. That we gave him from means of all types. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. So he took on a route. He started to travel on a course. Sababa could also mean a course. حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما. Until he reached the place of the setting of the sun, and he found there the sun setting in a murky water. ووجد عندها قوما, and he found people there by that water, by that murky water, or where the sun was setting. So isn't that he's just traveling, but he's traveling and he's conquering place after place after place. Because a king just doesn't go out traveling for fun, right? He's traveling with the reason of conquest. So if his whole army and all his resources and all his might. He's traveling and he's conquering land after land after land until he reaches to the far west, which is interpreted as where the sun sets, because there was no more land beyond there, right? There was only the sea. So, and he says what it says here, and he found a place where the sun was setting inside a murky water. Okay. The sea is only blue around an island, right? Because it's not a huge landmass. But the sea or the ocean, when it comes to a huge landmass, is usually very murky near to the landmass and before it gets blue. All right? And we in Barbados have no problem understanding this, right? That he saw the sun setting in this water. As we can see, when the sun sets, it looks like it's going in the water, right? So that's pretty easy for us to understand over here. So he found the sun setting in a murky water, and there he found a nation. He found some people there. So, قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, we said, O Dhul Qarnayn, Allah says. So some people, because the way this ayah is phrased, قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, think that he may be a prophet as well, right? Some say he's a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some say he's a prophet because Allah addresses him himself. قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, we said to Dhul Qarnayn. Okay? So if Allah said this directly to him, that means it's through wahi, so he's a prophet. If this was told to him through a Nabi, it can also be as there was someone in between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Dhul Qarnayn, then he's not a prophet. Or قُلْنَا يَا ذَا الْقَرْنَيْنِ, this could be divine inspiration, meaning an ilham, right? We put into his mind or into his thought, whatever it is. So then he's a wali again. So there's difference of opinion as if he's just a pious servant of Allah or if he's a prophet of Allah. So he says, we said, O Dhul Qarnayn, imma an tu'adhiba wa imma an tattakhidha fihim husna. Either you punish them, right? Tu'adhiba, either you punish, or either you treat them kindly, right? Tattakhidha fihim husna, you take goodness in them, meaning you either treat them kindly or you either punish them. He was given two choices: to immediately go and just start a battle and destroy them, or either you can treat them kindly, meaning you give them da'wah, you explain to them that what's the religion of Islam, and then if they don't accept, then you can probably take military action afterwards. So he was given the choice that you can either start military action direct, or you either treat them kindly, meaning you speak to them first. So Mufassirin explain here, maybe because the da'wah had already reached them, meaning the belief of believing in one Allah and so forth had already reached those people. That's why he was given the choice to just start a war with them. Whatever the case may be, Dhul Qarnayn chose the second option, that he will treat them kindly first. So it says here, قَالَ أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى وَسَنَقُولُ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِنَا يُسْرًا. So he says here that Dhul Qarnayn, he answers, قَالَ, Dhul Qarnayn says, أَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ, as for those who do wrong, فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ, we will soon punish them. ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِ, and then we will return him to his Lord. ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ, then he will be returned to his Lord. فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا, then his Lord will punish him with a terrible torment. So Dhul Qarnayn mentions here that he's going to treat them kindly first, meaning he's going to give them da'wah towards Islam, he will speak to them, he will encourage them. But then if there are still those who persist on wrongdoings, right, who do not accept da'wah, or who still want to behave in a wicked way, فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ, then those we will punish. Meaning we will either give them the death penalty or subdue them in somehow, right? And then ثُمَّ يُرَدُّ, then they will be returned to their Lord. right? Because they die without faith, فَيُعَذِّبُهُ عَذَابًا نُكْرًا. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the harshest punishment, which should be the punishment of the hellfire. Okay, so this is with those who oppose him and those who are not ready to take on the rulership of him. وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ. And as for those who believe, وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and do good actions, فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى. Then for them will be a reward of the finest type. Okay, meaning when we put forward our dawah, and there are those who accept our dawah and become Muslims, then for them will be the finest reward. Meaning we won't punish them, we will encourage them, we will help them in progressing both in their religion and in their development as a nation. وَسَنَقُولُ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِنَا يُسْرًا. And we will say to them, or we will, or you can say, وَسَنَقُولُ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِنَا يُسْرًا. And we will say kindness to them from our commands. Meaning that we will be lenient with them. Meaning our directives to them, وَسَنَقُول, mean we will say, meaning we will, our directives, min amrina, from our commandments, will be yusra, will be those of ease. So those who come on to the right path, and we will reward them, we will help them establish themselves in deen and in dunya, so forth. And our directives to them would be very easy. We won't have harsh commands upon them. We won't tax them heavily. We won't be rough with them. We will treat them with the utmost kindness. So this is outlining the akhlaq of Dhul Qarnayn. Right? So when historians read the characteristics of Cyprus, who was the emperor of Iran at the time, this was basically, these were his, what you can say, characteristics as well. Places he conquered, he would not, what you can say, destroy or, finish them off, but he was a kind conqueror, right? He would help develop places, he would be kind to his subordinates, and so forth, right? So this was the characteristics of Dhul Qarnayn. Well, these are the characteristics of Dhul Qarnayn, because historians said they match some of the characteristics of Cyrus, right? So that's why they connect the two. So this was the first place well, not the first place, but he was conquering land, and this was his, what you can say, method of conquest. That every place he went to, he would give the people a choice. Those who believed, he would, help establish them, help establish their society, help develop their place, and so forth. And then he would carry on, conquer another place until he reached the west, until he conquered everything towards the west. Then Allah says, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. Then he took another course, okay? Because he conquered all the lands and went straight into the end of the west. There was no more land over there to conquer now. So he directs himself now where? To the east. So ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. Then he traveled on another course. حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغَ مَطْلِعَ الشَّمْسِ. Until he reached the place of the rising of the sun. Meaning, same way, he went conquering all the way to the west. He traveled now towards the east until he reached to the furthest east. وَجَدَهَا تَطْلُعُ عَلَى قَوْمٍ. And he found that the sun was rising upon a nation. لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُم مِّن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا. That we did not make for them against the sun a sitra, meaning a shelter. Okay? So he conquered كَذَلِكَ, right, in the same manner. As the same manner he conquered the west with great humanity and establishing societies and helping the development of nations, he went about his work towards the east in the same manner, right? Conquering people, establishing with kindness, establishing societies, developing places, and carrying on, he was conquering until he reached the east, the farthest part of the east. And when he reached the furthest end of the east, he found a very primitive people, right? Allah describes these people, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُمْ مِن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا. that they were near the place where the sun rises, meaning they were at the last end of the eastern land, where the sun would come out from. And these people were so primitive that they had built no type of protection from the sun, meaning they had no houses, no tents, nothing. Some say they didn't even have any clothes, right? They had no means to protect themselves from the sun. They were very primitive people. So then Allah says, Kadhalik, meaning like the first set of people was the same action taken here. They were given the choice. Again, Dhul Qarnayn was given a choice how to deal with them, and he dealt with them with kindness again. He called them towards Islam. Those who believed would be honored, right? And he would help develop them as a nation, right? We'll teach them how to build houses, how to dress, and everything, right? He would help develop their society. And those who were not ready to believe and who opposed, then they would have been wiped out. So then he conquered towards the east until he reached to the furthest end, and he conquered these primitive people as well, and he established a set of goodness in that society. He helped that society develop as well. وَقَدْ أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا, and we have encompassed, right, بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا, all of what is in connection to him, بِمَا لَدَيْهِ, and we have encompassed all that relates to him, khubra, through knowledge. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of this section here, well, not this section, but this section isn't finished yet, but at the end of this stop where he made, that whatever we are telling you of Dhul Qarnayn, we are telling you through khubra, meaning through knowledge. We are not telling you this out of some history book, or we're not relating this to you as a guessing game, but this is true knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with which we're relating this story of Dhul Qarnayn to you with, right? That this story which is being related through wahi and through the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَدْ أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا, that whatever we are saying with regards to Dhul Qarnayn, we have encompassed all of it, meaning all of the happenings around Dhul Qarnayn with khubra, with our knowledge. So at the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala related that we are only going to tell you a bit about Dhul Qarnayn. Okay? Only a few points we're going to mention about Dhul Qarnayn. But وَقَدْ أَحَطْنَا بِمَا لَدَيْهِ خُبْرًا, but we have encompassed everything about him. Well, we know everything about him, but we're only going to tell you a few things about him. So the last safar he's going to make, well, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relates, inshallah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Subhanallah.